Hello, Panthers Pride Facebook group. Um, if I was Penrith and so if I was the board, I would go back to brown and white in the future. So not this season, obviously, but this would be the main. White shorts for some away games. This is the Clash one, and also the pre-season royal blue versions with a little bit of brown. I've got Rob to do on the shorts, the brown panther there, and that is to honour the Penrith Waratahs history, because they played an important role in having Penrith in the New South Wales Rugby League in 1967 entry. So if there was no Penrith Waratahs, there would not have been a Penrith team in the NRL now. So for the warm-up tee, I would have the 1991 uniform. That's, yeah, no numbers at the back. Yeah. So we'd have that as the warm-up ones. And then home and Clash and pre-season. And also in Indigenous one, I would have Penrith have a brown jumper with white, red, and blue Indigenous artwork, and front and back, but have a brown panel with white numbers, right, at the back of the Indigenous. So I'm going to be Penrith versus all clubs in the New South Wales Rugby League / NRL and ARL. History, my custom ones, the Adelaide Rams and Hunter. I didn't like the Super League design. So there's my custom ones. So Penrith home and away versus everyone, and including the Dolphins, which don't enter the NRL until 2023. Penrith Panthers versus Adelaide Rams at Penrith. The Adelaide Rams design, because I didn't like the Super League uniform, I got Rob to do it in the 1975 Penrith Panthers design, but no panel on the back. So, yeah, so that's Penrith versus Adelaide Rams at home. Adelaide Rams versus Penrith Panthers in Adelaide. Penrith Panthers versus Auckland / New Zealand Warriors in Penrith. Auckland versus Penrith in Auckland. Penrith versus Balmain. A Penrith custom Balmain ones, so different socks Rob did for me, and the orange shorts, so it's all custom, right? Balmain versus Penrith at Leichhardt Oval. So that was the proper Balmain shorts and socks. So, and yeah. Penrith versus Brisbane Broncos in their 1988 uniform at Penrith. Brisbane Broncos versus Penrith in Brisbane. Penrith versus Canberra at Penrith. Canberra versus Penrith in Canberra. Penrith versus Canterbury at Penrith. Custom Canterbury socks. Canterbury versus Penrith at Belmore Sports Ground. Penrith versus Cronulla at Penrith. Custom Cronulla shorts and socks, sky blue shorts. Cronulla versus Penrith at Cronulla. Penrith versus the Dolphins at Penrith. Dolphins versus Penrith in Brisbane or the Sunshine Coast. Penrith versus Eastern Suburbs or Sydney Roosters at Penrith. Option 1. Penrith versus East or Sydney Roosters at Penrith. Option 2. East/Sydney Roosters versus Penrith at the Sydney Football Stadium. Penrith versus the Gold Coast Titans at Penrith. Gold Coast Titans versus Penrith on the Gold Coast. Penrith versus Hunter Mariners at Penrith. Option 1. And these are custom Hunter uniforms because I didn't like the Super League ones. Penrith versus Hunter Mariners at Penrith. Option 2. Hunter Mariners versus Penrith Panthers on the Hunter. Penrith Panthers versus Illawarra Steelers at Penrith. Illawarra Steelers versus Penrith Panthers at Wollongong. Penrith versus Manly at Penrith. Option 1. Penrith versus Manly at Penrith. Option 2. Manly versus Penrith at Brookvale Oval. Option 1. Manly versus Penrith at Brookvale Oval. Option 2. The Melbourne Storm uniform is custom ones based on the 1998 design. So Penrith versus Melbourne. Option 1. Penrith versus Melbourne. Option 2. Penrith versus Melbourne. Option 3. Melbourne versus Penrith in Melbourne. So the other 3 options was at Penrith. Penrith versus Newcastle Knights at Penrith. Newcastle Knights versus Penrith Panthers at Newcastle. Penrith versus Newtown at Penrith. Newtown versus Penrith at Newtown's home ground. Penrith Panthers versus North Sydney Bears at Penrith. North Sydney Bears versus Penrith Panthers at North Sydney Oval. Penrith Panthers versus North Queensland Cowboys at Penrith, option 1. Penrith Panthers versus North Queensland Cowboys at Penrith, option 2. North Queensland versus Penrith at Townsville, option 1. North Queensland versus Penrith at Townsville, option 2. Penrith versus Parramatta at Penrith. Parramatta versus Penrith at Parramatta Stadium. Penrith versus South Sydney at Penrith. South Sydney versus Penrith at South's home ground. Penrith versus St George at Penrith. St George versus Penrith at Cogra Oval. Penrith versus St George Illawarra at Penrith. St George Illawarra versus Penrith at one of St George Illawarra home grounds, Wollongong, Cogra Oval or Sydney Football Stadium. Penrith versus South Queensland at Penrith. South Queensland versus Penrith in Brisbane, option 1. South Queensland versus Penrith in Brisbane, option 2. Penrith versus the Western Reds at Penrith, option 1. Penrith versus Western Reds at Penrith, option 2. Western Reds versus Penrith in Perth, option 1. Western Reds versus Penrith in Perth, option 2. Penrith versus Western Suburbs Magpies at Penrith. Western Suburbs Magpies versus Penrith at Campbelltown. Penrith versus West Tigers custom orange shorts at Penrith, option 1. Penrith versus West Tigers at Penrith, option 2. West Tigers versus Penrith at Campbelltown Sports Ground. West Tigers versus Penrith at Leichhardt Oval. So I've gone through all the New South Wales Rugby League clubs, Penrith versus them, from who's been in the comp from 1967 onwards. So I only did one Gold Coast side. There were Gold Coast Seagulls, Gold Coast Chargers, Gold Coast Giants from 1988. But I just did the Gold Coast Titans. Thank you.